$200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES podcast with your host, Soul Blazer.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Super NES podcast. I'm Greg. He is Joe.
Hello.
We are here for another special episode for you, 150. Traditionally for these every 50th episode, we like to do something special for you. So since this is episode 150, we just wanted to do a special. Also, this coincidentally runs out to what might be our last episode of the year. I'm not sure yet. Maybe not, depending upon when this gets released. I mean, it's like, we may not record this the last episode of the year, but this may be the very first episode that you guys hear in 2021. It's confusing. The time is like, time is like timey-wimeys, and like we're not really quite sure. Anyway, the point is, this very well could be the last episode of the year, and we always like to do a special for the last episode of the year. So this is very like coincidental combining of the two factors. So for this one, well, I decided to go ahead and give Joe the chance to do something that I gave George a chance to do research, like a while back. Since the podcast has been going on for a while, 150 episodes, I gave George a chance to go back in the list and bring up some games he wanted to talk about because he felt strongly about those games, either one way or another, positively or negatively. So like I said, I wanted to give Joe the same chance. Joe is kindly obliged. He has a list here of 6 games. So I'm going to let Joe drive the episode. He'll bring up each game in turn. We'll talk about it for a little bit. Then move on and just see where the conversation takes us. So, Mr. Joe, whenever you're ready to start off, sir, please.
All right. So there's a little few caveats. One, I didn't go in depth and do research like Greg does, because of the fact that these games have been covered in the podcast before, and if you want more information on them, please go back in the catalog and listen to those particular episodes. Also, I didn't try to beat any of these games. I gave myself a 30-minute limit to play them all. I did go back and occasionally play a little bit more, but I didn't want to get bogged down in playing and getting stuck in nostalgia and, limiting the amount of time I had with other games.
Okay, yep, that's fair. So let me just clarify. I know your Super NES experience has been very limited. So that's one of the reasons that you want to join the podcast. These 6 games, had you played any of these games previously before this podcast?
Yes, I've played actually all of these previous to the podcast, except for one, which I'm leaving for last because I think you and I will have a lot to talk about with it.
Sure. Okay.
But everything else I've had previous experience with, and in my little in my notes, I actually specifically mentioned how I had that experience. So.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to Yeah, so just wanted to clarify for context because that helps. Because I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if you went to brand new games or games you reached back in the well for them to.
No, most of these are retreading. Games that I've encountered before the podcast, and some even before owning a SNES myself. And then, I said, the last game specifically is the only game that was a new entry. Like I had never played it before. And I specifically, it's last for a reason.
Got it. Okay.
All right. So the first game was Uni Racers.
Oh, okay.
So I love this game. This is honestly the second game, only to Super Mario World, that I ever played on the Super NES. So growing up, As you all know, that I was a Genesis kid. That all started with our Friday trips to the grocery store. My parents had a what do you call it? Like a membership. There we go. To Sam's Club. And whenever we'd walk into Sam's Club on a Friday night to go do that family shopping, there was the electronics section where they would have each of the consoles set up with a TV, and we'd be able to play. So that's how I, experienced Super Mario World and eventually Mortal Kombat, which Mortal Kombat being the one that swayed me to get a Sega Genesis.
Yeah, so actually, so sorry,
nope.
I mean, I'm just interested, in just waiting here for a small bit because we haven't covered Mortal Kombat yet. I'm sure eventually at some point we will, but yeah, that whole it's interesting you bring it up because that whole shit. Because I want to say an opinion here on an opinion about that game, and I'm not sure how popular it's gonna be, but there was of course everybody knows about the whole controversy about the Super NES version of Mortal Kombat being cleaned up and not having blood in it.
Right.
Whereas the digital version of the game, you could do that with a code.
Yeah.
I actually think that playing both games, the Super NES version's better because it actually handles better. As far as the controls and the graphics look better. The Genesis version, I think, really only has going forward the blood factor. I mean, if I take that out, I think that, I think the Super NES version of that game is better. And I'm not just saying that because I'm saying that I like to be a fanboy. It's just I just think that everybody gets so hyped about the blood factor, they all gravitated to Genesis and kind of forgot Super NES port was actually very good. I thought. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're both equally matched in my opinion. I don't see too much of a difference between the two. And I mean, if you want blood, you play the Genesis. If you don't care, you got the Super Nintendo version. I think they're both fine. I think the divide comes with Mortal Kombat 2. Mortal Kombat 2 was head and shoulders better on the Super Nintendo than it was on the Genesis, but
because Nintendo well, yeah, that was how Nintendo got wise and decided to relax their policy.
Right,
so,
right.
Yes, that game was more arcade perfect, but yep, all right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, so go ahead.
No, you're good. So, so Uni Racers ended up becoming a staple when I would go over to my friend's house. So in late middle school, early high school, we were still doing the sleepover thing on weekends. So, down in his basement, he would have the Super Nintendo, and he had games like Super Metroid, A Link to the Past, and Super Mario World. And one of the games he had was Uni Racers, and I knew nothing about Uni Racers until he had popped it in. And there's this little unicycle racing around on the track, and I was like, "Oh, that looks like it'd be a lot of fun." So I, played it for a bit. Single player was okay. I enjoyed the experience of the single player, but this is by far a multiplayer game. This game shines as a multiplayer game. Playing against my friend, who would obviously beat me mercilessly because of the fact that he owned the game and was able to play it over and over again. I didn't understand, the mechanics of the game, and all, like the fact that the color of the tracks, of course now 20 years later, I know that the color of the track is telling you basically what's coming up and like how to adjust to that, and how to do, you got the half pipe tricks and everything else. Really in-depth game and a lot of fun, especially on the multiplayer side. The controls I felt were super smooth. Like anytime I messed up, I felt like it was my fault. Although I did notice, maybe, I don't know if it's a hitbox or maybe it's just, this game's, graphically it's kind of nice. It's very pseudo 3D-ish. Kind of like a 2.5. I guess that would be a good way to put it. It feels like there's a 3D background where, like a void. Yes. Tracks kind of come forward. So,
sure.
But, when I would do different tricks, like some of them, like you just nail them. But then occasionally, like, I just felt like, oh, like I did a backflip, but you're telling me that, you know, it didn't count because I didn't land properly. And I felt like I did land properly, you know, so maybe like hitbox or whatever the mechanic is, maybe wasn't tweaked perfectly, you know, but smooth gameplay in my opinion. The music is fantastic. This is probably one of my favorite soundtracks that I can think of in gaming in general. I really love, like, they get you motivated to race, they pump you up, and yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I gotta say about Uni Racers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that you picked this one because as I said, it's a pretty, it's a fairly uncommon game.
Right.
So yeah, it's fortunate it's fortunate that your friend had a copy that you're exposed to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I agree with most of what you said. It definitely is an underrated game. Like, you enjoy this kind of game. It's definitely worth playing. We never got the chance to play a multiplayer, so I have no experience with that. I'm glad to hear about how fun the game is multiplayer because George and I just played like single player mode. Controls are sharp. The graphics are good. Music's great. It takes a while to get the hang of things because there's a learning curve in this game.
Right.
Especially later on in the game when it asks you to do all those like moves and tricks to be able to win.
Yes,
And you're like,
yes.
oh god. It's just a shame this game's so uncommon because you know, it's like, you know, Pixar suing them because they thought that
Right.
that the game ripped them off. So it's like,
Which is horrible.
yeah, it's like I remember saying in the podcast, it's like I guess technically they have a point, but how many ways can you show you like a unicycle? I mean, it's like it's not really something that you can do like a whole lot of imagination on.
Right.
So, but per the story, the compromise the company reached was that they were allowed to sell the copies that already had been made in the first run, but they couldn't make any more after that. So this is kind of an uncommon game, and therefore if you want to play it, you either have to pay a lot of money for it or play it by emulation. You know, that said, if you enjoy this kind of game, it's definitely worth checking out. It's very it's a very cutie game without really being like, it starts off kid friendly, but it gets very, very difficult very, very fast.
Yeah,
So-
and this is one of those games, like, I find it, like, for me, like, obviously I played it over at my friend's house and whatever else, so for me, like, I've known about this game, so then when I hear people talk about, like, you know, the great games of the SNES or hidden gems, like, the fact that this game, like, hardly ever comes up baffles my mind, but then knowing that they got sued and the first batch was all that was able to be sold and making it an uncommon game, it makes sense, you know what I mean? Not a
Yeah,
lot of people were
exactly.
exposed to it, you know? I got lucky.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely, because this is definitely one of the rare cases where like you're in the right place at the right time, getting exposed to a great game that not a lot of people had the fortune to be exposed to.
Right.
So, but yeah, good pick, surprise pick.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely, it's a fun game. You know, okay. Okay, number 2. What's up next, Joe?
All right, so next is Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. And wait, before you all boo, this was, you know, for me, it's sad, but I mean, this was my Super Nintendo experience with, you know, RPGs. For the longest time, I first came across this in probably, I want to say like 2000, 2001 when I first started emulating Super Nintendo games. And literally, because it said Final Fantasy, I tried it out. And I fell in love with it. And before that, my only experience with RPGs for the most part had been the original Final Fantasy for the NES. And then by this time I had played Final Fantasy VII, but I hadn't beaten it. I didn't even put anywhere near close enough, time that I should have. And same with one of my favorite PlayStation games, Lunar Silver Star Story. If it wasn't for this game, and as simple as it is, and I'll admit it is baby's first RPG, it's very handholdy, but it did what it was supposed to. This game was to basically take us Westerners and introduce us to the JRPG that the East has been doing for years, and hold our hand through the entire process and be like, this is what you're supposed to do, this is how it goes. And it did its job, and it made me love RPGs more than I had before. And in doing so, 2001 was the turning point for me, because that's when I still had my original PlayStation, I still had all my games. I had a Dreamcast at that point, so like I went back and I finally beat Final Fantasy VII. I finally played through Lunar the Silver Star Story. I started exploring Chrono Trigger. Still haven't beaten that game. Another game that, spoiler, that we're going to talk about on here, Super Mario RPG, I was introduced to. There was another RPG that, Skies of Arcadia for the Dreamcast. So, like, all these games I was, I had been introduced to and had kind of played, but it was because of Mystic Quest and the hand-holding, the way that it teaches you patience is what it really does. It teaches you the patience that you need for an RPG. And by teaching me that patience, I was able to go back and enjoy all these other RPGs that I had dabbled with, but I'd never really gotten into. And although this is, as many will describe it, baby's first RPG, and I can't argue that, it's good. The story is, not fantastic. It's not deep, but at least it's a coherent story. It's not some like off the wall crazy story that you're going to lose track of. You're going to understand it from point A all the way to point Z. The graphics are decent. Obviously, Final Fantasy 4, 3 and 4, were better as far as graphically goes. Feel like the music in this was really good. I didn't hate other RPG games that had same type of music and whatnot, but I don't know, I feel like this one's a step above, but not quite to the bar that was set by like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy IV, and even future games like, Secret of Mana. I'm trying to think of the other one. But anyways, so yeah, I really enjoyed this for what it is, and it opened the door wide for me as far as RPGs go. And it sounds ridiculous that, you're probably imagining this 18 to 20-year-old man sitting there and going, oh my god, RPGs are so wide open right now, playing a game that would have come out when you were much younger. But it's the truth. I mean, this, if it wasn't for this, it wouldn't have taught me the patience that I need to have when going through an adventure like this. And in doing so, it really did open the door to a lot of other things, and now I can play RPG and enjoy them for what they are.
Yeah, that's a very good summary. Once again, I actually agree with most of what you said, because, I also like this game quite a lot, because I recognize that, yes, it is a very simple RPG, but you're not the only person I've heard of who's described it as being like a great entranceway RPG, and that's what it's designed to do. Just like for those of us who already have been exposed to Final Fantasy IV or other like quote unquote better games, it's very easy to turn your nose up at this one, and it is very simple.
Right.
But like I said, for what it was trying to do, it did its job well.
Yeah.
Like I also had this game as a teenager, like I enjoyed it, because I think it's fine for what it is. It's like obviously the best part about this game is the music. The music's great.
Right.
Like anybody should at least check out the music regardless, because regardless, the soundtrack is very good.
Right.
Also, people don't give credit for how good the translation is. Because they actually put in a lot of effort to make sure that they got the translation perfect, and the translation is far better than most other games of this time period.
That's very true.
So, I mean, the graphics are fine. The story's good for what it is. I mean, there are some interesting ideas in this game. The whole monster dens to clear them out. To proceed is not a bad concept. I mean, this is a pretty easy game to hate. But if you look at it for what it is, it did its job very well.
Yeah.
So whether it's not worth playing today is a whole different story. But I still think this is a very good kid-friendly RPG to start somebody off with.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But because there are other good kid-friendly RPGs out there now,
right? Of
course, but this one's still very good kid-friendly as long as they can read.
Yeah.
At a relatively good level. Because there are some big words in this, when I remember.
Mm-hmm.
It's still very fine as far as that as far as that aspect goes. So, I also still have. There was an offer in the. To add to the fact they wanted to be friendly, there was an offer in the manual where it's send this coupon into us. Just pay shipping and handling, and we'll send you a strategy guide.
Oh, wow.
A strategy guide for the game free. So I did that, and I still have that strategy guide today.
Oh, nice.
So, and yes, it does simplify the game even more for you to have it.
Right.
But it's pretty cool. It has some unique artwork in it, and whatnot. So, yeah. So decent RPG. I mean, like I said, good for what it's trying to do. I also agree with you. I also have a lot of nostalgia for this game.
Yeah.
So,
and the funny thing,
fun game.
I wish that I had found this when I was, younger, because when I did play Final Fantasy for the NES, which I had fond memories of, come to find out I really didn't do anything in that game, but I had fond memories of it. I used to boot up my friend's Final Fantasy cart, and it would have their game save. And I would just go around and randomly get into battles, and then, occasionally I'd die, obviously, from being run. But, that was Final Fantasy to me. I didn't understand that there was a story. I didn't realize that there was, a whole adventure I'm supposed to be going on. So, for me, right. Final Fantasy, when I was younger, was all about, I power up the game, I hit continue, and I'm going in and just randomly battling goblins and stuff and werewolves, and that's cool, you know what I mean? So if I had found this, when I was younger, and this would have been probably I would have been 12, 13 at the time this came out, so that would have been perfect. It would have, that light bulb going off in my head at that age compared to 7 years after that would have been pretty cool,
right?
Yeah, I've had to now, since 2001, basically spend the last 19 years going back and, retracking all these JRPGs that I missed out on.
Yeah, there are a lot of folks who've done that too, just because, don't feel bad about that.
Yeah.
But.
Well, next up.
Okay. Yep. Go ahead.
Next up, we got Super Mario RPG.
Of course, yes.
I had to get through one to get to the next.
Yep.
I mean,
totally different games. So go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, but what can you say? Super Mario RPG. It's got a charming story. I love the visual style of the game. It doesn't take place in the Mushroom Kingdom, which is nice. Get Bowser to fight alongside you at some point. It's an RPG in the Super Mario mythos. And I mean, what it opened the door for, I mean, I love Paper Mario and what they did with that series up until basically the DS iterations. Once they got past that, like the new Origami King is kind of horrible. But anyways, getting sidetracked. But I really, the music obviously is fantastic. The graphics are great. Gameplay is smooth. I really like that it's not your typical JRPG. If I want to sit there and go through it, I can sit there and keep tapping the A button to get through the commands and the battle system and whatever else. And, you could pretty much automate what you have to do. But Super Mario RPG rewards you for actually paying attention and going through the game by timing. If you can time your button press just right, you can kind of do a little extra damage, which I never found it to be a lot, but it's enough to where it makes a difference. And this, I still haven't beaten it. This is one of those. This is why I had to put a 30-minute limit on these games, because if I didn't, for one, I probably would have spent 3 hours on Uni Racers just because I have so much nostalgia for that game. But I knew once I jumped back into Super Mario RPG and started playing through it, I was going to get hooked and I was going to want to continue to play it.
Sure.
I don't know. I can't think of any low point for this game. I think if Chrono Trigger did not exist on the Super NES, maybe I'm showing my hand before anything about that game, but yeah. If Chrono Trigger did not exist, to me, Super Mario RPG would be the perfect RPG on the Super NES. Period. End of story.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't go quite that far because I really love Final Fantasy 4 and 6 a lot.
Right.
But having said that, having said that, I totally can get that because the bar is so high in the Super NES for RPGs.
Right.
There's so many great games on it. It's like any one of these games, if it was on another system, would be like a system seller, like bar none.
Right.
But it's just the Super NES had so many great RPGs on it. It's very hard to say just to rank them. But
Right.
but Super Mario RPG, that's available on the Mini, right? Isn't that game on the Mini?
Yes, it was available on the Mini.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, as I said, this game's been re-released. The first time we have a game here, it's been re-released multiple times.
Right.
So Super Mario RPG is another game that I played and beat back then, and I agree with I definitely agree with a lot of what you said. It's very charming. I mean, it's the reason the game came out so well is because it was actually a joint effort.
Yeah.
Square Enix did most of the work on this game.
Right.
Well, Squaresoft back then. They're Square Enix now, but because and that's why the game's so good, because it's they use Nintendo's ideas and concepts, and Square did all the programming for it. And Square, of course, made some of the best games on the system, so it's of course they're going to be good.
Right.
It's very it's challenging without being difficult. There's a ton of stuff to find in the game. You have choices. Your choices in your party composition, like how you make it. There's really the music in this game is very good. The graphics of the time were great.
Yep.
The one knock I'd have about it is that some of the camera angles, the 3D angles, are very hard to see what you're doing. So
that's true.
So making some make some jumps trying to figure out where to go in some areas can be challenging because of that.
I was gonna say, if you noticed when I was praising the game, the one thing I didn't talk about was the platforming.
Yes, platforming's not aged very well.
No, it hasn't.
For what this game gave birth to, the Paper Mario series, which is excellent.
Yes.
This is a really solid game. I just don't know how well this game holds up today, to be honest, because it's everything this game did well. I think the Paper Mario games and other games have copied.
Yeah.
I really just don't know. I mean, it's a fine RPG for what it is. I think you really got to be in the right mindset to really go back and play this game now in 2020, because it's some parts of it have not aged very well.
Yeah, I feel at this point, I would either play Thousand Year Door for the GameCube, or I would play Superstar Saga for the Game Boy Advance. Like, those are the two that I think that superseded Mario RPG. Like, Mario RPG was the template that they started with, but that's where they kind of made the jump and changed enough to where it kind of made Super Mario RPG obsolete.
Right. I mean, like, having said that, like, if you are of the mindset for old school RPGs, Super Mario RPG is still a very, good game.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah. So, like, like in a modern sense, now they came out with a full remake of the game. That'd be a different story. But yeah, I don't think. Yeah, but given how, given how we just said how much this game's concepts were copied over and improved upon by Paper Mario series, I really don't see that happening.
If they can come up with a partnership with Square today and do a modern version of Super Mario RPG, I'd greatly appreciate that.
Again, it's like, I know Nintendo and Square are working together again, but Nintendo nowadays is very, 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 very tight controlled over its properties.
No, I agree. Yeah, it's worse than it was in the 80s.
Right. I just don't see Nintendo giving permission to anybody to use their stuff in a game.
Yeah.
Outside of Sega, because like nowadays the two companies are working together very closely for other games. With that one exception, I really can't see anybody else having a shot at it.
Right.
So yeah. But having said that, the game, for what it was when it came out, the game's very good. It's a shame the game came out so late in the system that most people didn't see it.
Yeah, very true. All right.
But
and now we start
choices so far.
I was gonna say, now we get into the obvious choices. So so we've had three very diverse choices there, two similar RPGs, and we've come to Super Mario World. And I love Super Mario World. Oh my god.
Course. Yeah.
I won't go as far to say it's the greatest Mario game in the series. I personally think that goes to Mario 3, and I know that that's the argument. Some people see Mario 3 as the best, some people see Mario World as the best. And you know what? Everybody has a good argument. Either one of them could be the best one that's been made. I absolutely believe that. Man, jumping from 8-bit to 16-bit, seeing that transition, like I said, going to Sam's Club on Friday nights, that was one thing, to be able to sit there and play Super Mario World for half hour, 45 minutes, in Sam's Club. But what I used to really love was when my mom had to go clothes shopping or something and take us to Sears. And Sears used to be located in the Rhode Island Mall. The second level, you would walk in, and in the back of the store on the right hand side in the corner would be the kiosk, and it would be super loud. You would hear the fantastic music blaring out of the speakers. You would hear Mario doing his little twirl jump. I can still remember it like it was yesterday. And we used to, let my mom do her shopping, and we would just run to that kiosk. And, sometimes obviously there was someone there and we had to wait. But most of the times we could get there and we'd be able to play Super Mario World. And I can't remember. I mean, without owning a Super Nintendo, Super Mario World is probably the one game I've played the most out of anything else on the Super Nintendo. It's still one of those games. Actually, George and I just talked about this the other night. We were talking about we're thinking about actually streaming us running through this game, and I'm super hyped for it because I've played it I don't know how many times. I've beaten it maybe 3 or 4, but every time I've beaten it, it's been on either a cart that I had bought used and Rainbow Road was already, or Star Road, whatever, was already open, so you could pretty much get to Bowser right away. I didn't have to play through the game to get to him. So I've never officially beaten the game by playing it through level by level. But I'm looking forward to finally being able to do that with George. But I mean, this is, for me, this is like the pinnacle of, this is the reason why you buy a next-gen system. This is, there you go. That's the words that we're trying to come out of. The change from 8-bit to 16-bit was very noticeable. It's not like today where it's like, oh, I can see the crack in the wall now. It wasn't there before. It was very noticeable. The music was incredible, still incredible. Yes, as far as the Super Nintendo is concerned, it's maybe not up to snuff graphically, but I mean, it was a launch title. It was only going to get better from there, and it did. Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, showed that with the cartoonish cell shading that they did for that game. The power-up system, the first time I got the cape and learned how to fly was amazing. I literally felt like I was Superman, never mind Super Mario. And then, of course, the introduction of Yoshi. You get to ride on a dinosaur's back, and you get to eat enemies, and if you eat the, different colored turtles, you can either fly or you can shoot fire. There was, what was the... Blue one gave you wings, the red one shot fire, the yellow one did something, I can't remember what it was. Anyways, different shells that you eat would give you different abilities if you kept them in your mouth. Anyways, yeah, they did so much with this game that I really enjoyed it, and this blew my mind. Like, this was, if Sega had not released Sonic the Hedgehog, and if Super Mario World was all I knew, I probably would have got a Super Nintendo as a kid. I probably would have pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed to get a Super Nintendo. Before Sonic and Sonic 2 specifically was launched, I was all about Super Nintendo. I was trying to get a Super Nintendo. I pushed for a Super Nintendo, and my parents would constantly be like, well, you have the Nintendo, it's still just as good, and it still works, you don't need a new system, all that. It was only with the Genesis, and because Sonic was different than Mario, that we were able to get a Sega Genesis. So, it kind of sucked, but it was what it was. And I'm sure you have plenty to say about the original Super Mario World.
Yeah, most of it's... Yeah, so most of it I already spent, like an episode on this game way back when, so I'm not gonna repeat myself entirely. But yeah, no, I agree with you quite a lot here. I mean, I don't think it's bad favoring one over the other, because I think both the Genesis and Super NES had great games. Right. It depends on what kind of game it you were.
Yeah.
Both Sonic and Mario are good games in their own right, depending upon again what you're looking for.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so I definitely agree about that whole Mario 3 versus Mario World argument. I've always come down, I've always come down to World as being the better of two games. Having said that, there's no wrong choice.
Right.
Because Mario 3 was a great game in its own right. It's kind of like the whole Mega Man 2 versus Mega Man 3 argument as well.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, as far as a packing title goes, this is probably one of the best games, the best games on the system. Nintendo knew how to pack in great games to their systems. Because Super Mario Brothers also sold the NES.
Right.
And Tetris is still, to me, the best packing game, period, for a system, bar none.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because that's still millions of Game Boys on its own.
That got my mom to buy a Game Boy.
Exactly right, right. Because Tetris appealed to everybody, no matter what your age or demographic was.
Right, exactly.
So Nintendo really knew how to do pack-ins for their games. Whereas Genesis, for example, came with what was the name of that game?
Genesis originally came with Altered Beast.
Altered Beast, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Which is a fine game, but not the same snuff.
No, there's a reason why I didn't get a Genesis until the deal, which came with Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 packaged in with it.
Oh, yes, okay, yep.
We've discussed, I came from a Jewish family, And my dad is the traditional stereotypical Jew, so 2 games free with a system, he was buying it.
Right. Yep, exactly. So yeah, I mean, like, Super Mario World is just like, because I mentioned before, but Super NES was the first purchase I made with my own money because I was like 15 going on 16 at the time. And it's like, I also got Final Fantasy IV with the system. So, but yeah, like 2 great games to start the system with. It's like Super Mario World, I kept me entertained for weeks.
Yeah.
Because it really is a fun game. It's like the graphics are so good. I mean, Nintendo just knows how to make a good platformer, period.
Yeah.
So it's like the platforming's fun, the music's great. Yoshi's a great addition. The small touches that the game has, for example, like just the animations that play, for example, like finish the castles. Just like very cute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, it's like the cave takes a while to get the hang of. It's not easy. It's not as easy to fly with a cape as opposed to like the tail like a Mario 3.
Right.
Once you get the hang of it, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a bit of a learning curve with the cape, but once you get it, oh my god, is it so satisfying?
Yeah. And so the game is the game has a lot of like replayability value because like almost every stage has both a normal exit and a secret exit.
Right.
So looking around the secret exit like, always fun. Star Road is very difficult to unlock, and the maps there are very very challenging.
Right.
So when you when you 100% the game, you've earned it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's definitely challenging. Yeah, so like the battles against the Koopa Kids are better in this game than Mario 3, I thought.
Yep.
So definitely a fun game. Still a lot of fun to play today. I do not like Yoshi's World as much because basically that crying baby drives me insane.
I agree.
But yeah, Mario World for itself is still a very very fun game. It's like I agree with you. It's like this is how you sell next generation game. It's like it's like the only other game that might compare to this was some of the early PlayStation launch games.
Yeah.
Like Tekken and Ridge Racer.
Right.
Because again, those really sold the system, and
Right.
the system is like the same way that Mario World sold the Super NES.
Yep.
So, and later on also, I'm surprised you didn't get it. Yeah, surprised you didn't get a Super NES later on, like in the bargain bin when they came out with so when the launch game came out with like Super Mario World and Super Mario All Stars, like the same pack.
No, because by then I was looking at selling my Genesis and my original Nintendo with all the games to be able to get a Sega Saturn.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't even looking at Super Nintendo.
Because four great Mario games in one pack was an excellent deal.
Yeah, I mean, my gaming history is all about. I started on the right path, and then at some point I was misled, and I went down the path of darkness.
Well, I mean, like the Genesis did have a lot of Genesis certainly had a lot of like fun games for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there were fun games for the Saturn as well, but it's one of those I should have held on to everything and waited just a year or two and just bought a plate. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, just curious, like small side step. Did you ever go back and get the Phantasy Star games a shot?
I did. I don't hate them, but the problem is that I've played so many good RPGs already. So going back and playing those, I remember how I was talking about you need patience. I don't have the patience to get through those games.
Well, the modern remake of Phantasy Star that's available on the Switch is a very, very good version of the game. I do highly recommend it because they made it like very user friendly for like modern gamers.
Okay.
There's an auto map in the game for example.
Oh, okay.
Now. And as far as the whole trilogy of the original westernized RPGs games go, Phantasy Star, Final Fantasy, and Dragon Warrior. I actually think Phantasy Star holds the best out of those 3 games.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely worth playing. Phantasy Star 2, I agree with you, is very dated. Phantasy Star 3, however, I thought was very fun because it had that whole generational idea add to it.
Yeah.
Like the game, how the game played depended upon like who you married.
Right.
I wish more games did that because that's a very fun concept.
Yeah.
The best game in the series by far is Phantasy Star 4. That's still a very fun game to this day, I think. Very, very good game, very Final Fantasy-ish, like how it plays.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a series that I need to go back and give it a shot. You know what I mean?
Yep, yeah, definitely. So, just like Phantasy Star 4 is Phantasy Star 4 is the one game that's not had a modern remake made of it.
Right.
So you probably have to play that through emulation or whatever. But I think it's worth it. It's definitely it was their answer to Final Fantasy 4 and 6.
Right.
And in many ways, I think Sega succeeded.
Yeah.
All right, so good pick so far. We're on to number 5, the last game that you had some previous experience with. So go ahead.
All right. So second to last, I have F-Zero, and this is by far my favorite racing game on the Super Nintendo, bar none. They've definitely had some other ones that are good. The Top Gear series comes to mind, but F-Zero to me is the cream of the crop. Game is super smooth, beautiful. I love the graphic style. I actually was baffled when I found out how they actually did the game, and it's I didn't even notice it when I was playing it until it was explained to me. But the fact that the sprite for the car is basically stationary and the map moves around, which is pretty cool. I didn't. Now when I play it, I can't unsee that. But I love. This is another one. This is probably my favorite soundtracks of all time. I think not even just Super Nintendo. This is probably my favorite soundtrack of all time. Whenever I hear something like Blue Sky or Blue City, Mute City's music, it gets me pumped up, and it's nostalgia just is. Great variety in the vehicles that you can choose. This is another one that I wish there was multiplayer. This game would have benefited so much from multiplayer. I don't know if they just didn't have multiplayer because they were so focused on hitting that release date window for the system, and they just scrapped multiplayer, or if multiplayer wasn't even a thought. Either way, this game would have benefited from being able to play with someone next to you on the couch. I could definitely see quite a few elbows being thrown while playing this. I really can't say too much more. I mean, the game's, I don't want to say perfect, but I have yet to find a really severe flaw in this game. Obviously, it's F-Zero 64, F-Zero X on the Nintendo 64, sorry, is my preferred game to play, and I think it'll always be that way. But this paved the way for every game after it, and it's very sad that Nintendo has neglected this IP, because this is one IP that I wish was still going today. And yeah, that's pretty much it on F-Zero.
Yeah, once again, it's kind of scary how it's just so far, you and I have pretty much been on the same page. These games with a few minor differences. Because there's definitely less similarities between this game and the Super Mario RPG discussion we had a short time ago.
Yeah.
First of all, let me just say that even though Super NES didn't have, even though Super NES came out with a very small launch library, of just 5 games, Super Mario World, F-Zero, Pilot Wings, SimCity, and Gradius 3. All 5 games are excellent. It's like, they really went all out with trying to make sure that the games that came out with the system were top notch.
Right.
And I think they really agreed with that. Yeah, I'm not a huge racing game fan, but F-Zero is just but yeah, F-Zero is such a fun game. This was a game I had to keep playing over and over again until I found like 100% of the game.
Yeah.
Like all the maps and everything else like that. I was always like, Blue Falco, just because I I really like the balanced car. So because it was a good mix of like speed and power and whatnot. So yeah, the graphics at the time were just amazing. Soundtrack's very good. A lot of those songs have been remixed for the later games.
Yeah.
But they and some of the characters have also shown up in some of the Smash Brothers games too, right?
Yep.
I think. Yeah, right. Okay. So, but F-Zero is really like a very fun game. I just don't think multiplayer was possible just because of the fact that it would have pushed the technology too hard because split screen is hard to work sometimes, I think. So
so that's what I was wondering, was whether they just decided not even to think about multiplayer or if it was just scrapped, you know what I mean?
Right, exactly. Yeah, so yeah, definitely. So having said that, again, this is a game I think it's kind of hard to go back to these days because even though it's still a very good game or a good game in its own right, again, the formula has been improved upon so much with the later games. Because I agree with you. The N64 game is very good. My personal favorite in the series was the GameCube one.
Oh, okay.
That one's just insane with some of those courses.
I honestly haven't played that one yet, so I have the opportunity to be able to play it. I just haven't been able to yet.
They also, the GameCube one throws in like upside down and loop-de-loop courses.
Oh, okay.
It's like it's one of the few games that get my motion sick because of that. But still, I love it just because it's such an insane game. But yeah, I totally agree with you that it's kind of sad that this franchise has not had much happen in recent years. There was a joint arcade game that Nintendo put out with Namco a while back.
Yes.
That was F-Zero themed. That was pretty good. But beyond that, this is definitely a series. Definitely a series. I agree with you. I'd love to see that come back at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's a very, because it's a very, very good racing game. It's like it's not realistic. It's not one of those it's definitely not one of those games you want to play if you're looking for more of like a measured, balanced actual racing game. But for what it is, and I think one of the big reasons I did enjoy it so much is it's very over the top with like what it does.
Yeah.
Like we're very fast paced. It's almost kind of like an action game in points because it's like you're trying to beat your own time and avoid obstacles and have things memorized as to where to go in this part. Yeah, how to manage that part. Etc. etc. So
can you actually hit those jumps and take the shortcuts?
Exactly,
things like that. Yeah.
So
there's a lot of strategy in this game that you wouldn't think is there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So excellent racing game, for sure. So.
All right. So my last one is bound to get your blood boiling. So the last game I chose was the game I believe was the very first episode. So we're going from the first episode to here we are at 150. And it's the game Soul Blazer.
Yes, like where I get my namesake from.
So this is where I think we are going to part the seas a little bit. I really wanted to like this game. I tried really hard. I spent probably a good hour on the game, and to me, I thought it looked fine graphically. I liked the music. I liked the sound effects. I felt the gameplay was repetitive, and unfortunately, it felt like Gauntlet. And it felt like a step back, not a step forward as far as RPGs go, action RPGs go. But I didn't hate it, and that's what I really want to stress, is that I did not hate it. And actually, in my notes, I even put that I feel I need to spend more time. Even though I went double over my allotted time, I specifically played this one last so that I could spend more time with it, which is why I specifically put it last on my list here, so that you and I could discuss it more. But I enjoyed it for what it was. And like I said, I really wanted to like it and love it. I can't say that I hated it. Hate is a strong word. But I just, it didn't groove well with me. Like I said, it felt like Gauntlet, which just felt like a slog to me. Like I'm just going around and just, you're attacking the enemy over and over again, getting rid of them, and then there's like a nest area that you destroy. Being able to use magic was tedious. Having the orb spin around you, and then it was only shooting in the direction you were facing. And then you have to like time the orb just right to be stopped in front of the enemy. I don't know. There was a lot going on in the game that I don't think I was fully grasping, which is why I won't, sit here and say I either absolutely loved it or absolutely hated it. I liked it. I want to spend more time with it, and I'm probably going to. But it was definitely one I wanted to bring up because of the fact that it is your namesake. I do know that you like this game, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on this game, and maybe you can tell me that I'm an idiot and that I need to look at the game totally differently than what I already, have experienced with it.
Well, actually, no, you're not an idiot. I think you and I are actually agreeing on this more than you might suspect that we are.
Okay.
Because I like this game. I don't love it.
Okay.
The reason I use the name is because I love it. I played this game as a teenager when it came out, and just the title was very evocative to me.
Yeah.
Yes, I've always used the title. But the company that made this game also made Actraiser, which was one of my favorite games of all time. Period. They also went on to make another game that was Europe only, whose name I can't remember right now. I'm sorry, Europe and Japan only.
Okay.
Terra Magada or something like that, I think. I can't remember the exact name of it right now. It's the game tries the game tries to be an interesting mix.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I really like about it is the fact that it is a very unique game, because it's half action, it's half action, it's half RPG.
Right.
Because essentially you have you're in the dungeons, fighting the bosses, going through the dungeons, that kind of stuff. And then you're also, but your actions also tie directly to the plot, because as you're going through the dungeons, you're rescuing people and rebuilding the town. For me, it's a lot of fun to go back to the town after you're done and talk to people and advance the story and find items, that kind of stuff. So the story of this game is actually the story of this game I think is actually pretty good. For what it is. So the soundtrack of this game is very good. I think it's I think it's a great soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
But the graphics are fine for what they are. It's and there are some very cool ideas. For example, one stage is a whole shrunk down Doll Town.
Mm-hmm.
It was everything of you and everybody else shrunk down to doll sizes.
Okay.
So it's something one of those games. It's a very interesting, controversial, unique title in the sense that they tried to do they tried to do a lot of different stuff. They didn't succeed with all of it. What it is, I think it's a decent action game. You enjoy so if you enjoy games that are mixes of action RPG stuff, this is worth playing, I think. But otherwise, it's I'm not gonna fault anybody for not liking this, because the game does have some serious flaws to it. It gets a bit repetitive after a while. There's not enough variety to the enemies. The orb does have the flaws like you mentioned previously. But the like it's a fine game for what it is. If you like this kind of game, great. If not, then you don't. But it's like there's a whole bunch of other like niche games on the Super NES which are like this as well. For example, EVO, I think it's like a niche game on the system. Playing what it tries to do. There's a whole bunch of other games out there like this. So, yeah, I think no, I actually agree with you quite a bit. It's a serviceable action RPG mix.
Yeah.
It's kind of Zelda-like without being as good as Zelda.
Right. Yeah, I actually thought that we were going to be on opposite ends on this one. Like I even put in parentheses before like my little blurb. I was like cringe moment.
Yeah, I mean I know I totally get it because like I said, I have a nostalgia for this game, and I do recognize the fact it's not great.
Yeah.
It's a decent game. It's a decent game like what it is. I give the company credit for trying some ideas. They just didn't all work out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So, but.
Yeah, I've played ActRaiser before as well, and that's another one I just couldn't get into. But I think that's just because of like the side-scrolling stuff was fine, but it was like the world-building stuff afterwards that just didn't click with me.
Yeah, I love games like that. So just the combination of those two things. There are two things. ActRaiser I will defend because I think that's an awesome game.
Right.
But and the soundtrack in that game is so good. It's probably like one of the best Super NES soundtracks. Period. That Super Castlevania 4. Both really excellent tailored to the strength of the chip music.
Yeah.
Like those games. So.
Yeah, this was fun. I definitely I think in the future, maybe for maybe another anniversary episode, we'll have to do something like this again, because there was a couple other games that I definitely wanted to add to this list, but we would have been here for probably 6-7 hours talking games, because like Castlevania 4 was definitely in the running there for a bit. So
yes, yeah.
So there was definitely some other games on there that I talk about, and I know there are some that we will be going back and talking about at some point. So
sure, exactly.
So that's a plus. So it helped me decide what I was gonna limit to. I really want to thank you for allowing me to go back and pick through these games and be able to a lot of these enjoy for the first time in quite a while.
Yeah, sure. I mean, So I'm glad you enjoyed it. I mean, I thought it was only fair because I know there's a lot of games on here that we've already covered, and I'm well, unless I give Joe the chance, we're not really gonna have a chance to talk about them.
Yeah.
With a couple exceptions, which we're going to talk about later on, but yeah. So it's besides, I gave I gave George the same chance.
Yeah.
It almost seems fair.
Yep.
So George actually picked F-Zero for another one of his throwback games to talk about. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah, when I told him, because I told him about the situation when we were streaming the other night, and so what games did you pick? And I was like, I don't know if I want to give it away here on the stream. I said I'll tell you, one of them was F-Zero for sure. And he was like, we talked about F-Zero for a half hour. So
right, exactly, yeah. So
it was good stuff.
But yeah, of course, yeah. So thank you again, everybody, for taking the time to listen to us. We always appreciate it. So if you have any questions, feedback, comments, suggestions, feel free to leave it on our Facebook page. You can also send me an email directly to the SNESpodcast@yahoo.com. Joe, how can somebody reach you?
You can find me on Facebook under Joe Copel, obviously. But Twitter is usually the best at JOESUX30. I've been starting to be a little more active over there. So, yeah. And then, I might as well throw it out there. I do streaming thing with George 3 nights a week. So that's twitch.tv/gamesburrito, and we've been, basically sticking to modern stuff, but we have talked about doing some retro stuff. I guess there's a program called Parsec where like he can share his computer and we could play 2-player games by like, I don't know.
Yes,
it's weird. George
and I have used Parsec before in the past.
I used to be really good with technology,
well.
and now I'm just like, oh my god, technology is overtaking what my brain can think. So I'm starting to become the old man. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see what the possibilities are with that. So yeah,
Parsec works very well. That's how George and I used to do our multiplayer playing for the podcast by using that program.
Cool.
So, but okay. So a lot of fun. So anyway, next episode. I mentioned before a little bit of uncertainty. Uncertainty at this point as what exactly our next episode is going to be. It may be a special, special. It may be a regular episode. I don't want to tip the hand on the special quite yet because the details are still being worked out. But if it's a regular episode, there's 2 possibilities coming up, which will probably be our next episode. So we might as well just mention both of them because I'm not really quite sure what episode is going to be next. George wanted to look at a wrestling game. Which wrestling game do you want to look? I'm sorry, like Joe. Yeah.
But we are looking to bring George in, so.
Yes. So, we were just talking about George, so that's why he was on the brain. But anyway, so go ahead.
So we're looking to cover WWF WrestleMania, the arcade game.
Yes. So that will be covered soon. Also be covered soon, perhaps next episode. I did not realize that there was a Super NES Waterworld game, which is a movie I recently went back and watched with a fresh eye. So I'm like, well, this looks interesting. It actually looks like a decent platformer. So I figured, it'd be fun to cover it. So, chances are one of those 2 episodes, one of those 2 games, like it's gonna be the next one that you hear. The recording order may be messed up versus the release order, but don't worry about that stuff. It's all behind the scenes stuff at this point. But yeah, there are some additional stuff as you worked on at the beginning of the new year. So anyway, thank you again as always listening to the podcast. So we very much appreciate it.
Yeah.
Joe, thank you for taking the time to do this because
absolutely.
This is all research. This is all research on your part because I didn't have to do anything this time around. Because I'm like, I played all these games already, so I know them. So, but anyway, it was fun. Thank you again.
Thank you.
So, all right. So, thank you again, everybody, for listening. Hope you have a good day, evening, morning, whatever time it is of the day like you listen to this. And as always, take care.
Bye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Super power.